Well folks, it's been about 2 weeks since I took this engine out, and to be honest with you, I thought actually the hardest part was going to be sourcing this, but turned out I got this bit actually really quite easy and fast. My main issues I had was actually dealing with Iveco directly. I thought I would, just phone up, get the bits, get them shipped out, everything would be fine. Nope, not the case. So it took about 3 different attempts for them to actually get the right parts for me, and it's just an absolute headache. So my experience dealing with Iveco directly, absolutely garbage. Now, because of the headache that I've ended up having with this, as I go along and I point out the bits and pieces that I've changed, I'm going to put the part numbers on the screen, so at least you guys will be able to, find these parts online at a better price. So far, for a few bolts, a couple of gaskets, some oil seals, it was £550 from Iveco directly. After getting the part numbers properly, searching online, I could have saved about £200 odd. So not necessarily the best pleased about that particular experience, but I've got some of the parts on the bench just now. I just want to show you what it is. I have swapped out some of the issues that we found, and we'll start putting it back together. So some of the parts that I was needing was obviously the tone ring for the crankshaft itself. We might be able to see actually the damage on it. You might be able to see that these are all kind of the same height, and then these ones are taller. So this is where the damage was. So heavens knows how this has actually got damaged in the first instance, but it's broke, it's been swapped. Other bits and pieces that I've changed is the rear main seal. I've got a new oil seal for the oil pump itself. This is on the front, the oil seal at the very front of the engine next to the timing belt. Got myself a new gasket for the oil pump as well. New gasket. And what I hadn't realised is that these are also stretch bolts. These are TTY bolts, torque to yield. So these need to get replaced as well. And by jings, were these expensive. It was £100 just for 10 of these. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. These are effectively the E12s that are for the main bearings. And then you've got the TTY bolts. These are 11 mils. 11 mil heads on these. And these are for the piston caps. So there's 8 of them to change. Again, pretty expensive. They were wanting something like £5 or something like that per bolt. Ridiculous. 8 of them. 10 of these. And I think actually some of the main problems that I ended up having was the fact of these thrust washers. So this was the thrust washer set that was inside of the van to begin with. In case you're curious, if you ever have to replace these, there's a little groove here in the face of these. These face the actual crankshaft itself. So those slits face up to the crankshaft. They don't go against the block. So those little slits go against the crankshaft. But this was probably one of the most difficult parts in order for me to find. After, fighting with Iveco and giving them the engine numbers, serial numbers, everything, I finally got the kit through. But unfortunately it was a main bearing kit, so these thrust washers come with the main bearings. The main bearing kit as well. And what was different about these was the fact that on the new set, they were actually welded. They had a slight weld on them, on the actual bearing itself. So on both sides. And then that slips in. So I don't know whether or not, if this has been taken apart before, whether or not they put in the wrong thrust washer set. But I gave Iveco the engine number, the serial number off of it. They had absolutely everything. Pictures galore. And the kit that I got have these actually welded in. Now I was a wee bit nervous just in case obviously those were the wrong parts. Now I did size them up, they seem to be fine. I put them in line with each other, I fitted them into the block. Everything seems to be okay. So there's a chance that this set was actually the wrong one for that fan. Other pieces I ended up ordering was a new sump pan. So I got a new sump, new gasket for that. Clutch and all that seemed to be absolutely fine. It looked almost brand new. You still had the writing on the actual clutch plate itself. Got a new timing belt for it. Rumour has it you can't use the old timing belt again after it's been tensioned. So I got another one of them. £100 for the belt. Great. As I said, as I go through stuff in the video, I'll put up the part numbers so it's easier for you to find. And hopefully you can get a slightly better deal than what I did, because I got done 100%. So I've already put this back together and I've torqued it all up. But some of the headaches that I had an issue with was the 11mm bolts that hold on the piston caps. 7 of them came off okay. Well, one of them I ended up having to smash on one of the bolt extractors. I had managed to round off, so I had to obviously do that. But these ones are the E14 main bearing bolts. These bolts here are the big end bearing caps. Those are the 11mm. Don't have to replace the Torx bolts that hold, I think those are 12s, E12s. You don't have to replace them, they're not angled. One of the things I did realise actually was, if you notice that when you look at the specs and it turns round and says that, you know, you've got to turn it and you torque it to say 50 newtons and then you've got to spin it another 60 degrees. As soon as you see that degree mark, 97.2% of the time, those are TTY bolts, torque to yield, and you have to replace them. So that's what I ended up doing here, and that's what ended up costing me an arm and a leg and half a kidney. Now, because the set came, the thrust washers came with the main bearing seam shells, I put them in as well, so I've replaced those. I might as well, it cost me 65 quid before VAT in order to do that. So they've been swapped out now. I've put the oil filler back in this pipe, that's all back on. Cleaned up this surface, ready to accept the gasket for the sump. That there's the rear main seal that goes against the flywheel and the clutch. And then the other one's on the front end, which is for the oil pump itself. Now, some of you might be slightly upset that I didn't film me taking this out. There's a few reasons for that. One, I just couldn't be bothered. Two, first time I've done it, and it literally took me about a day and a half to remove this. Once I figured out what some of the issues were, I think you can pull this out probably in maybe a few hours. You'd probably be able to get this out once you've done it the first time. One of the issues that I ended up having though, unfortunately, was as I was trying to remove it out, the thrust bearing that's inside of the gearbox was actually holding on. There's 2 bolts there that you actually have to remove, but it's inside of the bell housing. Once we get to that stage, I'll show you where those bolts are. But effectively, I was trying to jack up the gearbox and it was just bashing off of the tunnel at the back. And this was to try and get the angle on the engine and be able to, you know, get it past the kind of cross member and then lift it out. But as I was doing that, EGR here ended up getting absolutely scalped a dillion, and I ended up breaking the connectors off of it. Now on this particular van, EGR's already been mapped out, and to try and hide that damage, I just 3D printed some extra covers just to put over it. But I basically damaged that. So if it ever gets put into service again, it needs an EGR. One of the things I did notice as well, actually, while I was taking it off, is that because EGR had been deleted and DPF apparently is removed, I was expecting to see a blanking plate on the turbo, just at the exhaust manifold. But that wasn't actually capped off. That was still running through here past the EGR cooler and then back into inlet. So I've made up a plate for that. I've sealed that up. A little bit of high temp silicone. Job done. Now really, for the most part, that was probably the main hiccup that I had, was the thrust bearing and the clutch holding on to the crankshaft, and that was stopping it from being released. If I had done that at the very beginning, this would have just came straight out. Apart from that though, everything's torqued up. I just want to get the sump back in, start putting all the pieces back together, and then change over this oil filter as well. This is on this back end here. So that there's the oil filter for, well, that there's the oil filter. Going to swap that out before we put it back in. On this side of the engine, we've got obviously all the timing gears, etc. Now I do have a pin in here on the camshaft to hold that. That's in place. There's no timing pin in here yet because obviously I've had to have that free in order for me to take it off. Now everything else looks really good inside of here. I do need to tidy it up a little bit. I need to clean up some of these surfaces because annoyingly it's been outside in the weather for 2 weeks. I've tried to go around and oil things to try and stop it from rusting, but it's worked a little bit, but not perfect. Straps that I've got here is just at the front. There's a mount here. You can see obviously that I've bent that. That's how much I was fighting with this dang thing. And then obviously I've just got a bolt up here holding that engine. Now the engine stand as well is a little bit awkward on this thing because I needed to get that crankshaft out. Because I need the crankshaft out, I had to remove the engine mounts, and I obviously had to remove this sandwich plate. This sandwich plate is what actually has all of your gearbox mounts and stuff in it, which is what you would normally attach the engine hoist to, or the engine stand to. When this was all off, however, you're really only left with these bolts here. So there's one up here, one there, and then the same on the other side. But they're so close together that I couldn't actually get the brackets here to line up with them. So I've ended up trying to put it on the engine stand here, really to stop it from spinning around as I was trying to torque it. But everything I've done so far has been on my back and then kind of facing upwards to torque everything up. Definitely a bit of a pain. Some gloves and covers just to try and block up any of the holes to stop, you know, critters. There's that, those plastic mounts that I've added onto the EGR just to cap it off. Apart from that though, you know, nothing really to report. Nothing else really to report, to be fair. It's really just a case of putting it in. In fact, while I've still got you on my hand, let's actually have a look at the main issue that I had. So really you disconnect it from the engine mounts here, lift it up and pull it off. But where I was getting stuck was with the clutch fork here on this thrust bearing. You've got these two bolts. Those two there, take them off before you try and remove the engine. So you need to remove the kind of slave cylinder, get that off, and then through this hole here, which yours might have a rubber grommet on it, mine didn't. In fact, some of my rubber grommet was down here and it was all melted into the clutch. I've cleaned that, so don't worry. But yes, these two bolts here was actually what took me the best part of 20 hours to get this engine out. Now you know. Remove them, remove that fork, the engine will just come out absolutely sweet. Now I've only got these little bits of wood in here for just now, just to hold up the gearbox because... why was that? Oh, I needed my jack back. I needed the jack back in order for me to hold the crankshaft up while I bolted it all in. So I was kind of doing it on my own. I'll put a picture of it though up here so you can see what that looked like. But apart from that though, disconnecting all the harnesses, that's all good. Under here it's a bit dark, apologies, but I did unbolt the DPF at the time because I thought that might have been holding things up, and I also removed the drive shaft as well. 6 bolts are holding that drive shaft together on the two parts, so just remove them, that'll be all good. I also found while I was working on this as well, I had a fog light cable that was damaged as well. So I've ended up patching that up together, splicing some new wires, repinned it, just reusing the connector again. Not necessarily the best, but it'll work for just now. I filled that full of the Lanogard kind of sheep grease. It's actually pretty decent stuff. Anyway, let's get this sump back on. Oh yeah, let's just get this sump back on. And according to the information that I've got, these should be 25. Right, what's next? I don't know. Let's get the engine mount on. Now I have put a wee bit of that Lanogard on it. Just to try and help with the corrosion, because I think this is aluminium. Right, let's do the same on the other side. All I need to do now, torque them up to factory specs, whatever that might be. I think, if I remember rightly, it will just be good and tight Newton meters. Now, what goes there? Balls. I worked it out. It was the alternator bracket. And I'm obviously going to make my life difficult, and I'm going to try and mount this all at the same time. Because why not just make your life difficult for the sake of it? Done. While we're here, let's get this filter off. We're replacing it with a classic MAN filter, W914/28. There's a part number. Let's see. Will you come off? Oh, the one that was on it was a Mahali. A Mahali. There we go. Cover your eyes. You didn't see anything. Hand click. Yeah, that's good. I'm not too sure what I'm going to do next, to be honest. Got that on, alternator bracket on, oil filter, engine mounts. I think now I'm basically ready to remove the engine now from the engine stand, so I can get the flywheel back on, and the clutch, and the plate. Sound like a plan? Let's go for it. So I'm just taking the weight off the stand. Maybe a wee touch more. Stay. Stay. So I've just got the 2 bolts here, obviously, to get off. Now, there was a kind of bolt in this hole here, and that was to hold the little stainless steel screw for the clutch plate. Let's go and stick that in. So it's basically just that. It's like a threaded kind of Allen key bit, HW8, Allen key 8, and then that just threads in, and then the screw comes in this side. Now, where did I put the screw for that? Right, time to hunt for that screw. That did make me incredibly nervous because I could not find it, but that's it there. Just a single wee screw. It's quite long, right enough. So, plate's on. That's really just locking it in place. Does anyone else ever get that horrible feeling that they forgot something? I do. But I think now basically we just need to get flywheel on here. Call it good. Now this is heavy. I think I might regret trying to put this on my own. There's a small lip. Give it a try. Now what? Oh no, wrong way. Now guys, I might have made that look easy. But that was a pain. If anyone's wondering, I'm using this, there's a setting on this which just basically, it's that kind of circle setting there. It's not really applying any torque to it, it just basically nips the bolts up. I'm going to go and find out what torque's on these. Right, things have changed a wee bit since the last time I turned the camera on. I started getting really quite annoyed with the flywheel plate bolts. They were a nightmare. 30 Newton meters for them, and then you've got to turn them 90 degrees. The problem is though, is that this plate wants to keep obviously spinning round, so you've got to kind of lock it off. I ended up using a bar here, just in the teeth, just to try and hold it. And then I just threw the clutch plate on. Clutch plate is 51 newtons all the way around for these. And then I've got this little centering tool here, just a wee cheapie off eBay basically. It's a US Pro number 6268. So that didn't seem to do too bad. It's basically got these little adapters, so that's centre now. And then basically that just slides into the flywheel, and then this bigger bit just goes into your clutch plate, and then that makes it all centre. So yeah, fingers crossed that works. Now next will probably be, well actually I don't know what's next. What do I want to do next? Well, I think actually that's basically that all done. So everything's put back together. It's a case now, I believe, of trying to get it back into the van. I'll do one last idiot check just to make sure, and then I'll set the camera up so you can all laugh at me as I try and put this thing back in. Well folks, it's the next day, and this is an absolute bear to get in. I've literally spent the last 4.5 hours, 5 hours, probably until about 8:30 last night. By then it was pitch black. The problem I'm having is trying to keep the engine level while it comes in, but at the same time not getting stopped and hit by this sill. If I put the chain too far back, the engine tilts down. So I've rethought it. I've taken the engine mounts out of the chassis. I've put them onto here because these bolts are narrower. They're not as tall on the bottom side as they are at the top. So maybe that will give me a wee bit extra clearance. I've also removed the gearbox mount at the back of this just to try and push the gearbox just slightly further back so I can get the engine in, get it into position, and then put the gearbox onto the clutch. Because I'm getting bound up here, even though everything's aligned as far as I can tell. But yeah, this is brutal. Do not recommend anyone to do this on their own. So with those adjustments, let's see whether or not this will go in a wee bit easier. Doubt it. Probably not. I am getting so close. I need more hands. I need more hands. But I think that might just work. See this stupid flipping fuse box. Just bleh. Need more hands. Ta-da! All done. Now, my brothers and my dad came up and gave me a hand putting this engine back in. I definitely could not have done it without their help. I've got everything back together again. I've topped up the coolant. I've topped up power steering. I've got everything connected. I've done my final kind of idiot checks. Radiator and that's back on. Everything's bolted up. I think everything's plugged in. I have checked more than once to make sure everything was okay. Let's give it a try, will we? Getting some lights. But that's just to do with the fact the headlights and that are disconnected just now. I'm just going to prime it a couple of times just because I did change the fuel filter around. We're out of neutral, clutch in. Oh, you beauty. Engine lights off. That started first time. What about my clutch? Will it go backwards? Oh yes, I put my clutch in the right way around. Even better. Well, that sounds good. Don't hear any knocks, don't hear any bangs. Not seen anything dripping. Get in. Yes. Well, hasn't that been an adventure? Engine out, bottom end rebuilt, engine lights off, started first time, didn't blow up. Well, I'll be dipped. Nice. Well, I think we can call that a success. Just need to put the front end back on now. Got all the headlights on, bumpers, bars, all that good stuff. Hood latch, all of that. Get that all installed again. Technically that's had its full service because the fuel filter, everything like that. Do need to put the air filter back in right enough though. Still need to put that in. But apart from that though, she runs, no engine light, and she didn't hesitate to start either. So I am going to take that as the win. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope some of the information is useful for you. If it has been, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And I will see you on the next one when we start actually building the inside and getting that done. See you in the next one. Bye-bye. Lovely.